Hello and welcome to the Tiny Human Knits podcast, my podcast about knitting, sewing, crochet, cross-stitch, and all manner of crafty goodness. My name is Laura and I'm coming to you from High Level, Alberta, Canada, where I live with my husband and our two pets, a bunny named Oscar and a cat named Shrimp. And you can find me online as Tiny Human Knits pretty much everywhere on Instagram, Ravelry, and Etsy. I have a Tiny Human Knits Etsy shop that has quite a few little goodies in there right now if you'd like to go check that out. And I also have a podcast group for the podcast, which is Tiny Human Knits Podcast in the Groups tab, where I'm currently hosting a sweater weather cal that has been going since the beginning of August and will go till the end of December. And I actually want to talk about that a little bit first, right off the bat, because I do have a giveaway prize to announce, and I finally remembered to bring out what the grand prize is going to be, because I've forgotten for the last few podcasts to show what I got for that, or at least a piece of it, so I'm going to go through that quickly first. I do apologize if the lighting is a bit weird. It's very gloomy today, and I find, especially where I am way up north, the lighting changes drastically from summer to winter, which it pretty much is right now because we've already had snow a couple days and it's getting pretty cold, so the lighting is really different, so I'm having to adjust my lighting. I think I'll be ordering some professional lighting, just like a small set to even that out a little bit soon, but for now I was more concerned about how things show up when I put them close to the camera, which they look fine. I've done a couple tests for that. They look better that way, so I'm not really concerned about what I look like, because that doesn't really matter. So first off the bat, I am going to announce a giveaway. I didn't show what the prize was going to be, but I pulled a name out of the chatter thread in the knit along thread, and I drew the name Mira Alyssa, I believe it's called. It's post number 76 in the chatter thread, and I was really excited when I picked her name out of the group because she has a finished object in the finished object thread already, which is the Ilia cardigan by Michelle Wong, and it's beautiful. It's so pretty. I want to make one of those myself. I do own the pattern because I am a chronic pattern buyer, and one day I will get around to making it because it's cable heavy. It's very cable heavy, but she finished that earlier, about a month ago or so. But anyway, down to the point. Your prize is going to be 2 skeins of my own hand-dyed yarn. This is sort of a take on Noxious. It went a little bit more tonal than I usually get it, but these will be sent your way, so just pop me a message on Ravelry and give me your details for mailing, and I will get this in the mail for you as soon as possible. So that is my first announcement for that. And the second thing, pardon me, I wanted to show, and there's going to be some crinkling here, I ordered the prize, or part of the grand prize for the knit along. I'm going to be making a couple extra bits and bobs to add to the prize, a sweater size project bag and some stitch markers and stuff like that. But I ordered 10 skeins of City Tweed DK from Knit Picks. And this is in the Tahitian Pearl colorway, which I thought would be a really good, just a neutral color, not anything that, something anyone could wear, really, because I didn't want to get something that was going to be where someone got it and they didn't even really like it. So nice and neutral, and 10 skeins in a DK weight is plenty enough to make a wide variety of sizes. So that's kind of what I was going for, where no matter what your size is, if you win the prize, you can make something out of it. So yeah, that's finally me remembering to show what the prize is going to be. Pardon if I'm coughing. I have had a cough since July and it's just not going away, so if I have periodic light coughs, please ignore that. So that is all I needed to talk about for the knit along. I can mention what I'm wearing. This is the first garment I ever made for myself that I actually wore. I remember when I finished making it. It was summer, like 2 years ago or something like that. It's back when I still didn't really know what I was doing, so I have no idea what yarns these are. I remember I bought the cream color, was one of the first things I ever bought from River City Yarns in Edmonton. This sort of bluey green color I think I ordered it from W.I.P'S because we were living up north at that time as well, so I did a lot of my yarn shopping online. But I didn't have this when I was making it. I do remember. But I can't remember what they were. Not at all. Not even a little bit. But I do love it. It's very comfortable. It's really cold right now, but I overheat really easy, which is why my face is red half the time. So this is just something a little more comfortable. It's still wool up top, I think. So it's warm, but it's got a lot of eyelets, so. And this is, I believe it's the Pearl Soho. It's either Pearl Soho or the Pearl Bee. I can't remember, but it is a free pattern. So I think if you go to either one, I'm pretty sure it's Pearl Soho. Don't quote me on that. But it's a free pattern, so you can go on there. I think it's called like a trellis or a lattice pattern. It was so long ago, and I didn't keep track of what I was making at the time, so I have no idea. So you should be able to find it there. Anyway, so moving on to finished objects, I have two technically. One was the pair of slippers that I was making last week. I sewed them up and gave them to my cousin immediately after. I didn't even bother taking a picture because they looked so odd. They kind of looked like a knit version of Uggs, and just the way that wool shrinks up when you're not wearing it as a sock or a slipper, it looked so weird that I couldn't even take a good picture of it, so I didn't even bother because it wasn't that big of a deal, and I was practically finished when I was filming my last podcast, so it didn't really matter. The second finished object, though, is the baby blanket that I was working on for a friend. And I used the Sweet Gemma baby blanket pattern, which is normally knit. It's knit in separate squares. And you normally knit 9 squares and sew them all together. And then it's just, you can do color blocking or different colors for each one or whatever you would like. But I used a larger or slightly thicker yarn and a slightly bigger needle. So instead of doing 9 squares, because I didn't want a baby blanket that was absolutely gigantic, so I just did 4 squares, and what I did was instead of doing, so here it is, instead of doing just 5 rows of the garter bumps that are done all the way around each square, I did 7, and then what I did is I bound off 2 sides. So I bound off this side, and then I kept the stitches live on the outside of the square, and I did that for each of the 4 squares. And then when I was finished the last one, I connected them all on a very long cable, and I just did a extra, or this contrast color, and I just picked up the live stitches. A lot easier than trying to pick up stitches all the way around all 4 squares, which seemed like it would be really annoying. Plus it means that you can continue on this edging without any interruptions. And then I did the border before I sewed the pieces together, which worked perfectly fine. It was really easy. And then I just sewed them up, sewed in all the ends, and gave it a good soak. And this is made out of James C. Brett in a Aran tweed for the green. And then the border, I've got the label here. It's Bernat Premium Tweed, which is nice, super cheap yarn, machine washable. So, you know, it's for a baby. You don't want it to have to be hand washed for someone who just had a baby. But yeah, I really like it. It was quite a bit of fun once I actually got myself to sit down and do it. And I really do enjoy the edging effect quite a bit. I also love how in each place where I joined the 2 squares together, there's this little bit of a dip where they come in, because every time I was going to join 2 together, I would knit the 2 stitches, the last stitch on the one needle and the first stitch on the next, or for the squares, I would knit them together just to close up that gap a little bit. So that made that little dip, which I think is super cute. But those are my finished objects for the day. I've been really busy with shop stuff this week, so I haven't had a whole bunch of time to do my own personal knitting. I do have a couple things. Last week I was I was working on a pair of self-striping socks that I had dyed the yarn myself, and I ended up making them too big for myself, but I thought they would be big enough for my husband, but they turned out to be way too small. I put in a Fish Lips Kiss heel, and it was just, the stretching over the instep was way too much. So I just unraveled it to the point of the increases where I thought I would just knit them for myself afterwards, and I just wasn't feeling it after that. I'd almost finished a whole sock and then unraveled it, and I was just getting kind of, not bored, but kind of bored. So I frogged that one, and I cast on another pair of socks immediately. So, and I actually forgot to mention this last time too, I got a Girl So Sheepy project bag, which I was super excited about. It's the first time I've ever bought a project bag that wasn't made by me. So it's gorgeous. It's got a nice firm interfacing, but it's not stiff, and it's really nicely lined. It's got her label right there, and I mean, come on, it's skeletons. So I cast on a pair of socks out of some yarn that I bought over the summer, and that is Drops Fabel, this one here, and this is color number 153, which is called Tex-Mex, and the only reason I know that is because the only reason I bought this is because Tex-Mex is my favorite seasoning to put on everything. In our house, we don't buy just small bottles of Tex-Mex, we get the big bottles of Tex-Mex, and then we can use it just as fast as other people use a small bottle. So what I have of that is, it's just past the toe because I didn't cast this on too long ago. And this is a self-striping, or a self-patterning, sorry, but I don't think it's going to be such a drastic self-patterning that I won't be able to put in a gusset, because personally, I haven't tried for myself yet to do a Fish Lips Kiss heel, but I really, really like the way a toe up with a gusset increase and heel turn fits for me. And I know I've made a pair of socks for my husband with the same design, and I like the way they fit him as well, and so does he. So I'm going to try and see if it interrupts the pattern too much, and if it does, then I'll just put, I think, an afterthought heel in. Maybe. We'll see. But yeah, it's just a little baby one. And these are on the needles that I don't particularly like. They're the Addy Regulars. I find doing the first couple rows of setup on these is really hard because the tips are very blunt compared to the Addy Turbo Sock Rockets. So I think I might order myself some more sock rockets just so I can have a couple pairs of socks on the needles at the same time without having to deal with this one. Don't like it. But yeah, there's that one. So I've got 3 works in progress, active works in progress this week. The other pair of self-striping socks that I was making last week I haven't even taken out of the bag. So and my second work in progress is a new cast on for this week. I cast this on a couple days ago, mainly because I really like this color of yarn that I dyed myself. And I do have this in my shop at the moment. This is called Swagman, and it is a beautiful moss green. It's very tonal, and it's just gorgeous. I love it. My husband named it. Swagman is a type of moss, so that's why. He's a very straightforward sort of man. And with this, I cast on a Pavement Pullover. This is by Veera Valimaki. This has been done a bajillion times by many people in gorgeous yarns. So I'm just past, I'm going to try to do this without dropping any stitches. So this is the collar. And then I've just separated the sleeves. And then I have them on holders. So I haven't gotten very far. It's just in the stockinette body portion now, but I really do love it. The tonal qualities of the yarn is really showing up. I'm really looking forward to blocking this too because I have never knit anything in this loose a gauge. So it does sort of worry me that the stitches are so uneven, but I think with a good blocking that'll even right out. And I should mention, my yarn base that I have right now is not like, it's a 75-25 superwash merino nylon, but it's not like super squishy. It's not that plump. It's a bit of a thinner sort of sock yarn, but I quite like that. It has, you can still feel the wool content in it, and I really like that. So if you're looking for a super squishy sock yarn, I'm going to be bringing in another base soon, but I haven't sourced that yet. So I want to get something that's completely sort of the opposite, where it's just squish factor. So I'll be working on that for a bit, but I personally really like this, and I know some people don't always want to work with the super soft, super squishy yarn, but I'm really liking how this is working out. I have to say though, my hands do not like working at this gauge. I'm knitting them on 4mm needles instead of the recommended 4.5. My gauge wasn't spot on. I did not like working with the 4.5. It was just too loose for this thickness of yarn. But I was sort of in between the 35-inch size and the 39-inch size, so I decided to go to a 4mm needle and then go for the slightly larger size, so that I measured it out. It should work out to be about 37 inches instead of 39, and there's a little bit of extra length which will make up for the length compared to the smallest size, so it should work out for me just fine. So I am not particularly worried about that. That's usually what I do. If I have a slightly smaller gauge but I'm in between sizes, I'll usually do the larger size to make up for any differences, I suppose. But yeah, I'm not alternating skeins, and I don't think I will. Maybe when I get to the second skein I will fade them in, but I've never alternated skeins on this kind of gauge. But also, if you guys have watched previous episodes, you know that color blocking doesn't really seem to bother me. So that's the sort of way I'm going. I mean, you've seen my Peabody pullover. It's got the darker strip right in the middle. It doesn't bother me. So yeah. And that's all being held in my, this is what I was calling the shawl size project bag. But it does fit a fingering weight sweater really well. I've got my 3 skeins of yarn. Whacking myself in the face with cords here. My Addies. And my new Notions pouch, which is kind of shop related. But I have got my new Notions pouch. I will talk a little bit more about these after. So that's all being held in the same bag. I love this bag. It's so pretty. I love it. Anywho, my third work in progress this week is sort of because Amy of the Stranded podcast has been knitting the same sweater that I cast on last June or July. Not this past one, the one before that. So over a year ago, I cast this on. And it was supposed to be a gift for someone, and then I decided that it was too nice for them, which I was totally right. But I put it aside because I had to start knitting Christmas gifts and custom orders, and I haven't had time to pick it up since. But because she's knitting it, I really reawakened a love for it. So that has been living in this Michael's like suitcase thing for the past year and change. And that is my Caspian sweater. And this is a pattern by Jared Flood. And I literally cast it on. I did the ribbing, I did the stockinette to the cables, and then I did 1 row of cables. And that's when I realized that it was too much trouble to make for somebody else. That it was something that I had to do myself. I'd have done 2 rows of cables. I can't remember. But yeah, I love this yarn. It is a pardon me. It's a recycled yarn from a sweater that I bought at a clearance sale, I think at the Gap. But it's got like little tiny flecks of tweed that you can almost not see. But it is, I believe it was 100% wool. I can't actually remember. But I, for a while, would be really into unraveling sweaters. So like this is one of the panels of the original sweater. And so because it's a fingering weight, I'm holding 2 strands together because Caspian is a worsted weight sweater, I believe. So I've just got my 2 already unraveled balls right here. And I know for a fact that I'm not going to have enough of this color to do the entire sweater. I'm like 99.9% sure. But I already picked out, this is another thrifted sweater that I unraveled. I was really into this last year. I made a couple sweaters out of unraveled thrifted sweaters. But this is just a color. I'm going to hold these 2 together double as well. I'm doing this color for the sleeves, which I think is going to be amazing because they are a saddle shoulder. So the sleeve cap goes up, decreases, but then you have a section from the top of the sleeve cap to the neckband that goes into the pattern on the top of the shoulder, which I think is gorgeous. So actually I've got the pattern here. I will show you. So this is the pattern, and in true Brooklyn tweed style, it is 1,000,000 pages long. Let's see if I can find you a sleeve cap picture. Oh, kind of. Okay, so in here, you can see that the sleeve cap goes up in a ribbing all the way up to the top. So I think that is going to be absolutely gorgeous in that contrast color. I'm really looking forward to it. And these cables are gorgeous. But as, I don't know if you guys watch Amy, but she made herself like a printout of all the different cables that she needed to do in one row. And they are pretty intense. And there are cables that do require 2 cable needles at once. So I just decided I needed this. And I'm going to really try to enjoy it. And I thought having one sweater that was so heavily cabled at the point where I am now, and then one that's pure stockinette like my pavement sweater would be a good contrast, because sometimes having a pure stockinette just knitting in the round sweater gets really dull, and I have a tendency to put it down very often because I get distracted, or I distract myself. It's not really getting distracted. But this will be something that I can grab when I don't want to do stockinette. I did post on Instagram that I wanted to start my Distort pullover, which is the Colorwork Knit Picks pattern that I bought the yarn for already, but I'll start it soon. It's definitely something I want done before Christmas. But I just really wanted to try a fingering weight sweater because I'd never done one before, so I was going to do that first, and then I'm going to cast on my Distort pullover, which I'm really excited about. With this one, with the Distort, it is written bottom up, but I think I might change it to be top down because I don't, with sweaters that are bottom up, that are colorwork especially, when you knit the body, and then you knit the sleeves, or the sleeves first, depending on what type of knitter you are, I find when you join under the arms, when you add all the stitches to one needle, it's very awkward. It's awkward, it's tight. Turning the corners around the sleeves is really difficult, and I find I would rather do it top down to avoid that, because I know there's patterning that's right at the join. I haven't looked to see if there are any 3 color rows right above the armpit, but just in case, I would rather avoid that. So I'm going to do it top down, I think. I also might omit the little like cable or the braid that's right at the top. Maybe add some different sort of color work there instead. But we'll see. I haven't even started it yet, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes. So those are my works in progress. I'm really looking forward to doing all of them. I got a mood yesterday where I want to make myself more socks. I'm still working on Christmas present sock knitting at the moment, and I think that's sort of going to be my thing this year. But I think in between maybe every third pair of Christmas knit socks, I'll make a pair of socks for myself. And I got a hankering for a very colorful pair of speckly socks. So I had one skein left over of my undyed that I had in my cupboard. So yesterday I dyed myself a full-size skein of a colorway that I've been practicing with mini skeins that's called Sugar Cookie. And I dyed myself a full skein of that. And I love it. It's exactly what I wanted. So I'm going to skein this up and put it in my sock knitting bag, and then when I finished a couple pairs of Christmas knit socks, then I can cast this on for myself. And this will definitely make 2 pairs of socks for me, because I only use about 50 grams for, for a pair of socks, and because I don't like tall socks. So last week I showed the pair of gray socks that I did the ribbing pattern on the top and then the leg. That only used one 50-gram ball of Knit Pick Stroll. So, and that's the perfect height for me. So I can easily get 2 pairs of socks out of this. So I'm really excited. I cannot wait to cast this on. It's actually still slightly damp at the end here. I'm going to unravel it and hang it back up to dry fully before I skein it up. Otherwise that would be quite a big pain in the butt. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. A couple of things that are going to the shop hand-dyed. I don't have all of them up here because I did them pretty late last night, so they're not entirely dry. But I have 3 skeins with me right now. Also got 2 skeins of Noxious over there. And I also have a skein of Swagman that's going to be going as a Franken skein because there was one tiny section that didn't get any dye, so it's like a white strip. And I... If it's not done on purpose, it's wrong. So I'm going to be putting it up as a Franken skein at a slightly discounted price if anyone's looking for a skein of Swagman. But yesterday I did dye 2 skeins of what I think is the world's most perfect gray. In my personal opinion, everyone's got their own gray. But this is what I'm calling That's Just Great. My husband made fun of me for calling it that. And then I also have 1 skein of what I'm calling Millennial Green. So, and I think they go absolutely fantastically together. I also have another 2 skeins of yarn that is called Autumn Fog, and I'll post a picture of those on Instagram. But honestly, this gray, this green, Autumn Fog, and Swagman, I might post a picture of them all together, are so gorgeous together that I might actually do a fade in those colors because they're so pretty. But those are going to be going to the shop soon, probably by the end of the day if I can get good pictures of them with our terrible lighting right now. Some other stuff that is going to the shop, which is the same as my Notions pouch. I have more of those. So if you're a fan of My Favorite Murder, which I very much am, and I would like to say a huge thank you to Katie of Inside Number 23 for even mentioning it on her podcast, which is the pure reason why I watch it or I listen to it. So I have her to thank for this. But I have 2 of these pastel Mergerino pouches. So they have, each of the pouches is going to have a little skull. This is a zipper pull or a progress keeper or anything you want. It does have a lobster claw clasp, so you can use it as a progress keeper. So I've got those 2, and these 2 are lined with subtly splattery fabric. So I've got those 2 pastel ones, but I also have 6 slightly more obvious pouches, you can say. Which are these? I really love these. I was thinking of stealing one of these to be my Notions pouch, but the pink one I sort of fungled a little bit. I made it a little bit too short, so I just decided I was going to keep it for myself. But these have a really interesting backing fabric, which is Mugshots. And then these ones are lined with a really deep, like almost dried blood red lining. So I've got 6 of those that are in the shop now if you are a fan of my favorite murder. I'm a huge fan. I remember I suggested it to a couple people that I worked with over the summer, and everyone I suggested to listen to it really enjoyed it, but I found a lot of people didn't really like the ramblingness of the podcast. Honestly, that's my favorite part. I really enjoy listening to the stories they tell, the murders they talk about, the serial killers, and all of that. But my favorite part is when they're just bantering back and forth because they are so funny. I enjoy it immensely. So that's pretty much it. I don't have any acquisitions today. I've got a couple things on order, but I haven't gotten anything yet. And actually, that's something I wanted to ask any of you, particularly those living in Canada. I have 3 packages from the United Kingdom that I either ordered or someone sent as a gift that were sent either a month or more ago, and I haven't gotten them. And I'm just wondering if anyone else has been having this problem, because I made a wool warehouse order the beginning of September, I believe, and it's a $200 order. It's a yarn to make a blanket for the cousin of my husband. And I ordered it about a month and a half ago and it still hasn't shown up. Which I know wool warehouse is kind of crap when it comes to shipping things out in a timely fashion, which is fine because I don't need it right away. But I'm starting to get worried because that's not a small order. I also ordered something from Amy of the Stranded Dye Works company, and that was also in the beginning of September. I didn't get it. I never got the first one she sent. I did contact her about the fact that I'd never gotten it, and she was very, very kind about it. She said she'd send out another one immediately, and she also said that she'd been having a lot of issue with parcels going to Canada going missing. And she sent another one, and I haven't gotten that one either, so I don't know what that is about. I also got a package sent to me by a friend in the UK, and that one I checked. That was almost a month ago that it was sent out. Still haven't gotten it. And it's starting to worry me a bit, but I don't know why that would be, that only from one country they weren't showing up. Maybe they're all sitting in a box somewhere, like a big shipping container. Maybe it's just really slow from the UK to Canada. I don't know. I'm not particularly panicked. It's nothing that I really needed on a deadline. Although the one from Stranded was supposed to be a gift, so hopefully I can get it soon and give it as a gift. Because I feel kind of like a jerk because it's supposed to be a present. But yeah, so if anyone else has been having the same issue, let me know. We can troubleshoot this. So that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. I realized the other day when I was watching somebody else's podcast on YouTube that I never actually talked about my how I learned to knit thing. And I thought, because I'm doing a sweater knit along, and maybe there's a couple people that are just starting out knitting garments, that this would be a good thing to talk about. So I will talk a little bit about how I learned how to knit. So no one in my family knits. Apparently I have a great aunt that was really into knitting, but my family, they were so much older. Like, I never met any of my great aunts and uncles. So I never actually met this person. But when I was in 8th grade, we were living in a place called Lacrete, which is a Mennonite community. And they have home ec classes. They still had home ec classes at the time. And when I was in 8th grade, part of the home ec class was learning how to knit. And they only had this tiny little store with like the world's cheapest yarn. There was no selection. There's hardly any selection now. There's a little bit, it's a little bit better, but it's it's still pretty bad. So we learned how to cast on with the knit on cast on, where you put a slip stitch on and you knit it and then you put it on the needle, knit the next one, put it on the needle, knit the next one. So we learned that, and we learned the knit stitch, didn't learn how to purl, just the knit stitch, and then binding off. So we all made scarves, which is hilarious because mine's really bad. And I found out a while ago that my mom still had mine. She had kept it since I was in 8th grade, so she'd had it for, what would that be, 14 years? And I didn't know. So I'm going to show you my my first ever knitting project look like, and it's terrible. It's funny though, I do look at it and my tension is actually quite good. So that's my fuzzy, poorly constructed scarf. So that's my first knitting project ever. That was when I was 13. So, oh, either I didn't sew in my end very well or I dropped a stitch. I don't know. But nobody ever wears them. My mom just keeps it for like sentimental value. And I think she finds it amusing now that she's kept this for so long, and then I actually ended up picking up knitting as a serious thing. But yeah, I did notice when I looked at it that my tension was quite good, which is something that I think I've been blessed with. I've always had good tension, even when I started knitting again. So I've never had to deal with wonky edges. So this was made out of probably something super cheap, acrylic, fuzzy, gross. There's some texture here. It's pretty bad. So I was actually quite pleased that my mom had it. I borrowed it from her the last time we were in Edmonton because I wanted to show you, you can start out here and then make really pretty things. So after that, I do remember knitting some very similar types of scarves for friends when I was in high school, but I don't really count that as like restarting knitting. But when I was 23, in 2012, I moved to England. I had been working at a Second Cup in downtown Calgary where I worked with a bunch of people who were from different countries. We had someone from Brazil, someone from Bolivia, a couple people from Japan, Korea, China, and it was so interesting being around a bunch of people who had moved to a foreign country where they didn't even speak the language as a first language, and they were learning English, sort of being immersed in the culture, and it was just so interesting that I became inspired to travel. I sort of did a cop-out where I moved to a place that also speaks English, but I had never been on a plane before. And when I decided I didn't have a passport, so I went through a company, can't remember the name of it, but they specialize in getting work visas for youth, so 25 and under, so 18 to 25, I believe. So I went through that company, I got myself a passport, I got myself a visa, so I was approved for it. So that the whole process took about 7 months to complete, because you have to go through quite a bit of things. You have to prove you have a certain amount of money in your bank account to prove that you're not going to go to a different country and just be a bum. So I went through that, and then I left in April of 2012. So I moved to England, and I had planned to first move to Brighton because I thought it would be a fun place. It's sort of artsy. And it's also, I think, it's the LGBT like capital of England, sort of. So I thought that would be a really interesting place to go. And so I first time I ever went on a plane, I had never been through customs before ever in my life, and I pardon me, put all my stuff in the bin, went through this is all my carry-on, it went through the scanner thing, and I totally forgot that I had a clutch that had brass knuckles on it as a handle, and I'm standing there, and they had paused, like they were taking quite a bit of time looking at my stuff, and then it dawned on me that I had this bag with brass knuckles on it, and that's all they could see is brass knuckles. And I'm just standing there going like, oh my god, why did I do that? Why did I forget? So I looked at the guy after I realized, I'm like, it's my wallet, you can take it, I don't need it. It's fine, I'll buy a new one, just empty it out and give the stuff to me, you can have it, doesn't matter. They did let me keep it, and I made sure on my way back to put it in my my regular luggage that was like in the plane, not with me. I just thought that was funny, my first, feeling really grown-up experience and totally bungling it because I totally forgot that I had brass knuckles in my bag. Anyway, so I landed in London, and we got there at like 6 o'clock in the morning their time, and I was so jet lagged. But I managed to use the underground, which was kind of scary and amazing at the same time. And then I found my hostel, and then I was in London for a few days before I went to Brighton. And I actually arranged a room rental at a house in Brighton. I look back on this and I have no idea how I did it, because I had never been anywhere before. It's the first time I went on a plane. It's the first time I went anywhere. But I managed to sort that all out. And I was living in this house in Brighton, and I was looking for a job, but I couldn't really find anything because I went when there wasn't really any jobs available. I also went, which it was kind of good because I went when the pound wasn't very strong, so the ratio of Canadian dollar to British pound was really good in my favor. So it's not like I really lost out a bunch of money by not getting a job right away, but for some reason, as soon as I got to Brighton and as soon as I moved into this house, all I wanted to do was knit. And I will never know why, ever. I don't know why. Some people have suggested, like, maybe it's the weather. Hottest summer they've had in ages. And like maybe it's just all the yarn shops, and there weren't even that many. I was kind of in the rural area of Brighton. I wasn't right in the center. So I was working at a bed and breakfast in York when I knit the second blanket, because I had a lot of free time in the evening, and so I would spend my evenings knitting, because it's a square sewn together blanket, that's why there's a huge hole in it. So I would sit on the floor in my room knitting squares while listening to the Stephen Fry read Harry Potter, which was so fun because I had never listened to an audiobook before, so it was really exciting to just sit there and knit and listen, and it was really quite fun. But after that, I think I knit a lace baby blanket. But I think my sister has that one because she became pregnant soon after I finished it, so I gave it to her. Not that she ever used it. But after I got back from England, I was only there for 4 months. I hated my job a lot, and so I looked for other jobs, and there wasn't anything available, so I decided I was just gonna go home because it didn't really make that much of a difference. So I went back home, and I sort of knit a bit. It wasn't as intense as what I had been doing before, and I honestly can't remember what I had made, so I know it wasn't that Christmas, but the Christmas after that, I knit quite a few things for people, but I can't remember what they were. But kind of the whole point of this is 3 years ago, I think about 3 years ago, I knit my first garment. So like fully, I made a child's sweater, and I still have it. I didn't make it for anyone specific, I just wanted to see if I could make one. So I made it out of like the cheap big balls of cotton you can buy at Michael's. And it's this, okay, let's see if I can get this organized. So it's designed for a 3-year-old. It fits me as a crop top. It's because I've got a tiny upper body. So it's mostly seed stitch, which I actually think looks really nice in this cotton. And then it's got cables, and this is the first time I ever did cables, so everybody knows. And then you pick up stitches along the edge and do a ribbed hood. So I'm actually really pleased with how this turned out. My sewing together is actually really neat too. It's even. It's not invisible, but it's even. And my I really like it, and I would totally wear it as a crop top if I didn't have such Gigantosaurus hips, so wouldn't look quite as weird. But yeah, this is the first time I ever knit a garment, and I remember it very specifically making this. If anyone's interested in the pattern, I will find the book for you if you'd like. So yeah, this is the first thing I ever made. So You can do it. And the way I managed to sort of upgrade myself as a knitter is that after I finished this one, that's when I kind of started making garments for myself. A lot of them I don't have anymore because they're actually quite terrible, and that's what's going to happen. If you start out making garments, it's very rare that what you make is going to end up being amazing or something you'll actually wear. And I actually had to get used to wearing wool as well, which is something a lot of people have to get used to. Sometimes you'll be too sensitive, you'll have to use cottons or acrylics or something a little bit fancier. So just experiment. You're gonna find your rhythm with sweater knitting or garment knitting. So like I started out with cotton. You shouldn't make sweaters out of cotton. Makes no sense. Makes no sense. But yeah, I just keep it as a sort of memento of my first foray into knitting garments. Like I went from this to knitting my own wedding dress in 2 years. 1 year? I knit my wedding dress 2 years ago. And this would have been... So yeah, it was like a year and a half between those two garments. So practice, practice, practice. And knit stuff that has elements that you are not familiar with, because that way you will improve immensely, which is what I did. I would always try to find patterns that had stuff in it that I had never done before. So you can do it. I want everyone to make themselves sweaters because it's so satisfying. So that is pretty much all I wanted to talk about today. I hope everyone's having a good season. I know the weather's kind of crazy everywhere. We've had weird fog quite a bit, which is pretty normal for this area. It's going to be a little bit dreary. It's going to start snowing to stay pretty soon. It was icy enough the other day after it had snowed that my husband hit a stop sign. It was either that or T-bone someone, so really he made the better choice, but it did ding up the car a little bit, so... Anyway, I hope everyone's having a wonderfully knitty time. I'm heading out to Edmonton tomorrow, so I might check out the new yarn store that Edmonton has to offer, and I get to have another knit night. I'm so excited. I love knit nights, and I never get to have them, so I'm really looking forward to that. So I hope everyone is feeling alright, and I will see you next time. Bye!